everyone, my name is Katie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming my February wrap-up with you and going over all the books that I read in February. February was a pretty good reading month for me, considering that it was a short month, but I think the fact that I was on vacation for a week in the Dominican really helped me get some extra reading done. I was able to read a total of 7 books. If you can tell, like, I am in a different setting. I usually film in front of my bookshelves in the other room, but it's a really dark and gloomy day outside, and the lighting just is better in this room. And I kind of just wanted a change of scenery, but the glare from the windows is actually like kind of playing tricks with my glasses. So I do apologize for that extra glare, but bear with me as we go through the books that I read this month. So I'm going to start with the books that I actually DNF'd this month. So the 2 books that I didn't read. One of those was After You by Jojo Moyes. So basically, I just changed my mind on reading this book. I decided that I just didn't really care to know more about Louisa Clark. My book club that I was reading Jojo Moyes for, actually, we canceled our meeting. So I just changed my mind and decided not to do it. I really don't know that I'm a Jojo Moyes fan, even though her books do fall into the realm of the genres that I generally like. But I don't know, like, they just don't appeal to me. So I just changed my mind on this, decided not to read it. I'm going to unhaul my copy and move on with my life. The other book that I did not finish this month, even though I started it, was Pretty Girls by Karin. So I actually ended up getting about 100 pages into this book, and I just realized that this book was headed in a really dark direction that I just didn't care to experience. It is a really dark thriller, and I'd never read a Karin book before, so I was giving it a try, and I've just determined that it's too dark for me, and they're probably not a thriller that I am going to try to read at any point in time. Nothing wrong with this book. I still think it's a good read, and if you can stomach that type of stuff, and if you're interested in that, then definitely like Karin. The writing was really good, so I do recommend her books. I just decided that the content and the dark stuff that was going on, there was, sex crimes and the murders, and it just wasn't something that I am into right now, so I just decided to not finish it and read something else. The books that I did read, though, this month. So let's start with the 2 middle grade books. The first one is Bad Guys by Blabey. This book was the one that I chose for my ages 7 to 9 book club. And I mean, this book is great. Like, I gave it 5 stars. I know I'm not the intended audience, but I thought it was really, really funny. The cartoons are wonderful. Like, this would be a great book for a young child who's just getting into chapter books, because there's really neat illustrations. The storyline is really interesting because it's kind of about first impressions and stereotypes, and so I really enjoyed it, and I think that his whole series is probably really good. So if you have kids or you work with kids and you're looking for a good series for ages like 7 to 8-year-olds who are just getting into chapter books, especially boys, then I recommend giving the Bad Guys series a try. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet with my book club in February because I was sick, so I look forward to hearing their thoughts in March when we talk about it. The other book that I read was The BFG by Roald Dahl, and this one I don't think I actually ever read as a kid, and I think I kind of know why. It's a bit fantastical, and that's not really my thing. Obviously, it has to do with the big friendly giant who kidnaps Sophie from her orphanage one night in London, England, and it kind of leads on to putting a stop to the other giants who are kidnapping and eating children during the middle of the night. And I mean, it's a really, really interesting storyline. Some of the kids in my group really liked it. Some of them also just thought that they were maybe too old for it. Didn't get as raving of reviews as I thought it would. But I mean, Roald Dahl is a classic. There's lots and lots of silly words. There's lots of made-up words. And the storyline is entertaining. It's a good choice for a chapter book. The next book that I read this month is Sadie by Courtney. And let me tell you, like, this book was so good. It was my first 5-star book of 2020, which is very, very exciting. I really enjoyed this book. The story had me hooked from the very beginning. Sadie is a missing girl. It's from the point of view of Sadie, so before she's going missing, she actually experiences the mysterious death of her younger sister, and so Sadie is kind of on a journey to solve her sister's murder. She tries to track down her father, basically, because I think she believes that he has something to do with it, and it's just a really interesting premise. This book is more of a mystery contemporary, but it's told in a really neat reading style, so you are enjoying the book from the perspective of Sadie, but you're also experiencing the story from the perspective of a reporter / investigator who is actually filming and creating a podcast based on the investigation. And so the book is told through alternating storylines. You go from that investigation to Sadie as well. And I listened to the audiobook, and let me tell you, like, the audiobook version is amazing. It features a whole cast of characters, which really makes an audiobook experience that much better when you have different people doing different characters and being those different voices. It's a mystery contemporary YA, and I definitely think that it appeals to an adult audience. Like, I don't think that you have to be a teenager to enjoy this book. Like, I definitely recommend it to adults because it is just a really interesting story. You feel for Sadie, who is, trying to figure out what happened to her younger sister, and it's just a really interesting read. I highly recommend this book. The next book that I read was Winter in Paradise by Elin Hilderbrand. Now, I read this book on vacation. It is your typical beach read, and to be honest, I didn't really like it that much. It was very predictable. So it is about an older woman whose husband dies in a helicopter crash in the Virgin Islands, and in that helicopter crash is also a young woman. And it turns out that his husband had a mistress, but of course the young woman had no idea that he was married. And then the man who died and the woman, they have 2 adult children, and all the truth about their father and about this family comes unraveling. They end up going to the Virgin Islands to figure out exactly what happened with the plane crash and discover that, their husband and father owned this massive mansion, and that he was seeing this other woman and actually has, some other secrets there. And that's all I'm going to say. It was way too predictable of a read for me. I didn't like how all the characters just kind of came together, relationships just started to blossom, and it was just way too predictable of a read for me. But of course, as a beach read, as something light, it did do that, so I did read it, finish it, but I'm only giving it 2 out of 5 stars, and I don't think that I will be reading or continuing the series. I've also determined that Elin Hilderbrand probably just also isn't for me, because I did try to read her Winter Street series and felt the same way. So, if anything this month, I'm learning about authors that I don't really like. The next book that I read was In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle. I had this book as a advanced reader's copy from Atria Books and Netgalley, and this book comes out on March the 10th. I really like this book. It was so engaging. I read it in 2 sittings. I couldn't put it down. I read about 75% of it on my Kobo on the plane ride home from vacation. This book is marketed as a contemporary romance, but it is so much more than that. Dani has this dream where she is 5 years in the future. In her present life, she's just gotten engaged. She's working as a lawyer. She's really excited about life. But in this dream that she has, she wakes up, she's in a different apartment, but she recognizes all her stuff, and she's actually with a different man. So that kind of sets her on this tailspin, thinking like, oh my God, what is going to happen to my life in the next 5 years? And she starts to work hard about trying to not make that vision come true. But the book really just is so much more than that. It's about connections and about relationships, and I really liked the friendship between Dani and her best friend Bella. And to me, that's the main relationship in this book. So I don't think that this is very much a book about romantic love. I think it's just about those strong relationships. and what we do for our friends and what we do for others. This book was sad, but also just so beautifully written. And I really connected with the characters. I could see a bit of myself in Dani. She's a very ambitious lawyer. She's always kind of had this one-track mind about her future. You know, she's just checking the boxes, and that's just kind of how she's living her life. And then her best friend Bella is very spontaneous and adventurous, and she's a photographer and an artist and just has that more like whimsical vibe. And I can connect to that, and I can connect with Dani. I'm more of a Dani myself, but I have had friends, and actually some of my best relationships are with people who are like Bella, because they just bring you out of your comfort zone. So I really connected with this relationship, and this book is just so much more than what it's being marketed as. I don't want to say any more than that, but I do encourage you to check this book out. It is a definite good read. Another book that I read this month was Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. This was the book club pick for one of my in real life book clubs, and I was really excited to read this. It was a highly anticipated book. The premise sounded really good. It's about Amira, who is a nanny for this well-to-do white family in the suburbs, and Amira actually gets accused of kidnapping the young daughter Briar of the family that she is babysitting in the grocery store. And that kind of sets this book off. This book started out really strong. I was very captivated by the first chapter, but the first chapter is where the accusations take place, and that's really what you get from the synopsis. So then I was kind of left thinking, well, if that's all that I actually knew about this book, what's going to happen in the rest of the chapters? And I was definitely a bit disappointed with this book overall. The characters were really flat and not that great. I mean, the best character I thought was probably Briar, the child, who's 3, because I felt like she was the most honest and acted her age. Then there were other issues with this book. I thought that some of the content was problematic, and I realized that, like, as a white person, it's hard for me to necessarily comment on some of the racial issues that I found in this book, but there were some, and it was definitely a bit cringeworthy, and I just was like shaking my head like, what the heck? What? Like, they said that? I just didn't like it. And it is well written, and it's an easy read. It moves along, but it just wasn't good. And there are times where I just can't even make sense of this book still. I did talk about it at book club, and even after book club, I didn't really know where I sat with it. There's just some issues with this book that I can't really speak to. But other people are rating this book like 4 or 5 stars, and that's great, but I had some issues with it, and I just thought that parts of it were a little bit problematic for me. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I ended up reading this month was This Will Only Hurt a Little by Busy Phillips. Now, I actually read this book as an audiobook. I don't generally plan out the audiobooks that I listen to each month because I kind of just choose them more on a whim based on what's available at my library, or I also use SCRIBD for audiobooks. And so this is the one that I chose this month. I did have a copy of this actually on my TBR. I really enjoyed this audiobook. I didn't know too much about Busy Phillips. Probably what I know her best from was like White Chicks, which I've seen a couple times. But other than that, I didn't really know much about her. But that's fine, because sometimes I don't need to know a lot about a person to choose to read their biography. Her stories were really authentic and really often very humorous. And she was really open and candid about the issues and the things that she struggled with. I had no idea that she struggled with being called fat by casting directors and producers. She was actually denied roles because of her weight, which is shocking, because I just, as a woman, like, that is just so ridiculous to me. And I think that, like, she is really pretty and gorgeous, and so therefore I just couldn't believe that that happened. I was shocked by the amount of grief that she has experienced in the sudden losses of people in her family and in her friend circle. I had no idea that she was on Dawson's Creek because that's not a show that I watched, but I guess she was. And she was really good friends with Michelle Williams, who is also married to Heath Ledger. And so, you know, she was good friends with them when Heath Ledger died. So I thought that that was a really interesting thing to learn about. And I just really appreciated like her honesty and her stories. And I mean, she's funny without even trying to be funny, which is the best kind of humor to me. She also gives us this really vivid description of going into labor with her first child. And honestly, I was in my car on the way to work listening to that description, and it almost just made me reconsider my life plan, because I was like, oh my God, like that sounds horrible. I don't know if I actually want to ever do that to my body. Just really, really vivid storytelling that I just really appreciated and really enjoyed. And the more that I got into this book, the more that I didn't want to stop listening, which is always a good audiobook. I do recommend this. I gave it 4 stars. If you know nothing about Busy Phillips, or if you know everything about Busy Phillips, I do think that you will enjoy this book and probably learn something new. So those are all the books that I read this month. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked any of these books, if any of these books are books that you've read, or if you're planning to now add any of these books to your TBR, please let me know in the comments below. My March TBR is already posted, so I will link that there. If you haven't checked that out yet, you can see what I plan to read in the month of March. I look forward to hearing about the books that you are reading this month. If you want to share those with me in the comments below. I'd love to know how your February reading month was. If you had any 5-star books, or if you also DNF'd any books, please let me know. I love to chat books with everyone, and that's one of the things that I'm really liking about this community, is just getting to chat about books with more and more people. If you're liking my content, you know, you can always hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you soon in my next video. Bye guys!